My name is Joseph Garrigan, candidate number 1024849, and this is my Computer Music Assessment 2 Reflective Analysis. The track I produced is an electro-pop track called A Little More. This track was built using a variety of mixing and effects processing that I will be talking about in this video. The song was inspired by many other dance tracks that I have been producing throughout the year, as well as the latest electronic hits from artists such as Hot Chip, Justice, and David Guetta. It's in the electro-pop genre because of its heavy use of distorted synths and side-chained 4-to-the-floor rhythm. This song was built in a verse-chorus bridge structure originally, but later in the creation I decided that the track should have a dubstep-themed breakdown at the end to keep the track engaging to the listener. The first thing I should mention is the fact that I used a second DAW called Reason 8 by Propellerhead. This DAW has, in my opinion, a better selection of sounds and samples, but they lack a certain level of tweaking which I needed for this song. In order to achieve this, I also used Ableton Live 9 Suite. In order to get Reason and Ableton to talk to each other, I went onto Ableton's mixer and I changed the in to Reason. I also sent the monitoring in so the Reason sounds could be mixed at the same time as the Ableton sounds. Some of the tracks in this piece were created and mixed solely on Reason. These were chosen to stay as a part of Reason because I felt that some of the more creative effects used were only possible using Neptune, an auto-tune and pitch corrector, and also Reason's synchronous effects modulator, a multi-effect modulator with 3 different drawable modulators that can be used to create many useful effects. The first track on Reason is the 4am bass, a bass made for the second verse and the ending of the track. This instrument plays octaves through MIDI and is being automated on Reason to fade in and out when it is needed. This fills a lot of space in the mix when the song is at its most repetitive, hopefully allowing these areas to stay interesting. The second instrument I used in Reason was the Anthem synth. Made using Reason's Parsec spectral synthesizer, this is the classic sawtooth lead heard in every dance track. This lead is designed to work in conjunction with the 100 Tears organ, which have both been panned away from each other and have both been given special sidechain compression to leave vital space in the mix, which is done using a mix bus. The 100 Tears organ has an array of effects added to it, most notably of which is the slide chorus generated from a dual pitch shifter that can also act as a chorus unit. It widens the sound while still keeping the tonality and overall power. Lastly, there are 3 drum machines, each with a different purpose. The first is a collection of synths that were used in the intro to establish the rhythm and feel of the track before the main and most memorable sounds start playing. The second is the additional kicks and snares that were needed to keep some of the other drums more powerful as other instruments in the mix get louder. And the third is the main drum set, which also contains samples for the low growling bass at the end of the track. Each of these samples was given meticulous listening and appropriate compression, EQ and reverb when needed. Most notable processing of these samples was the 2 growling basses at the end. A set of effects were used to widen the sound as well as adjust the pitch. In order to widen the sound, I used a send bass stereo chorus. Using the pitch adjuster on the drum machine, I changed the pitch of the bass using automation. All of these tracks were then run through a master compression unit and set to a low ratio and fast attack to give the track an added sense of depth. Finally, before going into Ableton as a single track, this group was put into Reason's maximizer, and a soft clip was applied, meaning no sound from Reason came into Ableton any higher than unity gain. Some of the more ambient textures, the heavier basses and main synths, were all created using Reason or from Reason loops, but were then bounced down and put into Ableton, after which they were then spliced around again. Finally, automation was added. The 9-volt bass is the most iconic part of this track, not only being the most prominent bass sound, but also being the first and last sound heard. This was created using an old guitar loop that was put through a series of choruses, modulation effects, and sidechain compression. It was then added to Ableton, at which point a compression unit and EQ were added to allow the sound to fit more properly in the mix. The fatty bass below is a sub bass that was used to cut up and play only in the offbeat to suit the dance style of music. This also had compression added to it, but it was much harsher than the previous compression, which was needed to let the bass sounds through the louder parts in the track. The laser bass is the essential sound that separates this track from other dance-like genres. This is reflected mainly in the high-end distortion and sudden attacks and releases of samples. In order to allow this sound to stand out in the mix, I did a little to the mid-range using Ableton's EQ8. This allowed some of the growlier parts of the sounds to come out. The Monolith on the Moon is a percussive synth effect I found in a folder of plugins for Reason. This sound was lifted from Reason as is, with no additional effects. When it was bounced down to be used in Ableton, however, certain parts of the loop were used in smaller amounts later in the track. This synth effect was used to add atmosphere to the track in places where little interest was needed. It is quiet enough in the mix that it is not immediately noticeable, but when the song is played without it, the song sounds emptier. The next instrument I'll be talking about is the Pulsar synth. This synth is the original building block of this track. It is also the most important sound in the track, as well as the main synth used in the chorus. It is the earliest sound made in this song and is considerably different from when it was first made. Originally, the sound was made using Reason's Parsec synthesizer, but it was bounced down in Reason and spliced into a pattern that was then changed again when it was bounced down a second time into Ableton. After that, heavy compression was added, as well as a mid and high boosting to the EQ to give a high-pitched sound with a little bit more character. The sound was then panned left to right and then sped up consecutively from left to right, from 1 bar to half a bar and then a quarter of a bar. Reverb was then added to the sound and boosted before the main pad cooled down before the ending and at the very end. This was done to allow a smooth transition between the two very different amplitude variations in the mix. The top loop drums were used in the track to add some of the higher and more varied sounds to the upper percussion of the drum section. The drum loop was then given a dip in the low end and a boost in the high with the help of EQ. A reverb was also added to give an extra fullness to the sound. The main signs of splicing with this track was in the chorus, where the drums were identically cut up and split into a different rhythm. Final mastering of the whole track was added at the end with an EQ on the master track. The higher frequencies were boosted to give a brighter feel to the track, and was boosted further to allow hi-hats and higher frequency sounds to be heard over the heavy bass. I believe that this track is a testament to the amount of musical knowledge that I have accumulated since working on this project. A lot of the thoughts and ideas in this track have come from other tracks I have created in the last year, and each one has been, in many respects, its own learning curve towards this final project. I find it difficult to make the sounds I hear in my head a reality using the tools that I have available, but thanks to my new discoveries about audio manipulation, I have now learned about the infinite possibilities with computer music. Thank you for listening.